Hi Ralph, this is Calvin here again with a little webinar on lag um, and how to hold lag. And before we get started, though, I wanted to go over something that's going to be a topic of my January 2012 article on the short game and control swings, just so that we understand that you know the good players all have many types of swings, and some are for power and some are for control, and the best of them, or the real great ones, can do all right. They can hit it very far and powerful, or they can use their control swing. So let's go over just a couple things in terms of lag that most people maybe never even thought to think of. um, but of course, with Jamie, it's a power swing, so we want to hold lag. So keeping the angle of the wrist held, obvious, right? Should be obvious that for all the long players, holding lag allows them to create some stored energy and keep the arms a little tighter to the body so that there's some way to accelerate the body or to rotate the body fast and let the energy go late. And when we do that, we can create more power. Now, on the other hand, here's Justin Leonard on the left here with a controlled pitch shot, right? So he's got less wrist cock, of course, but on the way down, he's releasing it immediately. So it's a slight slow cast, and this creates a nice controlled swing. So this should be obvious. This should make so much sense because while we're releasing the wrist, we're increasing the moment of inertia, so we can feel this heavier weight that we're swinging. So by definition, we'll swing a heavier object a little bit slower, and then we're going to actually have more control of that movement or of the speed of the club. If somebody like and some of these guys do it, um, Bubba or JB, they hold their lag on pitch shots, and so it creates a little situation where by just a little increase of the power or the speed that they add into the swing, they might get a lot more distance. So as you can see, that would create so much more difficulty for control. So it should be understood that we have to have all these types of swings. And Tiger in his heyday had all of these types of swings, and I'll show that in my article. So let's start from this standpoint that if anyone wants to hit the ball farther, better control of the angle of attack, um, to hit it cleanly, because if you're casting or you're early releasing, flipping, it's going to create fat shots. And then if we don't want to just mask it or cover it up, compensate with the wrong move, which is typically for a lot of people, is just move the upper body forward or slide the entire body forward, which may allow clean contact, but then it's slowing the body rotation. So therefore, you lose some speed and therefore some distance. So let's go over some of the micro moves. I know there's a lot, but let me explain why lag is so hard for us to hold, and then go over some of the ways that we're going to try to look into how we're going to release it. So that should be in the next segment here. Okay, so now that we're all on the same page, hopefully, um, let me go over the micro moves to uh, holding lag, or actually increasing your lag as you start the downswing, and why this is so hard to actually do, because this is really difficult. So the first and foremost is radial deviation. So basically, it's the angle of the wrist that's changing, right? So we've got this angle, and as you finish the backswing, the angle gets a little bit smaller. So we should see some uh, narrowing of the club toward the body. And again, this is a little bit distorted from the 2D distortion, but we know that this This would look entirely different if he were not holding leg or he were not increasing radial deviation. So radial deviation is just the thumbs bending up, towards your, say, your head, as opposed to if your thumbs were going the other way, this would change the shaft angle to being wider, and therefore that's moving toward ulnar deviation. So that's the first and simplest one to understand. Now, I had discussed this in my article that so many of these things that you're needing to do, or that you need to do to make your lag better and hold your lag better is actually kind of counterintuitive. So here's the next one. So it's the left arm that's extending, so it's bent here at the top, and he's going to extend and straighten the arm. Okay, so some people are already bending, which would mean the left shoulder is starting to retract a little bit too early. The scap's moving back, and so that's going to create a little bit less of an ability to hold the lag. Okay, now this one's a little bit oops, sorry. Okay, so this one's a little bit harder to see, but next is the left shoulder protraction, which just means in a backswing, we're using the left shoulder protraction to move the body this way. The right shoulder is also retracting to go this way, and the two put together create a rotation of the body, okay, or of the upper body in this direction. So we're rotating this way. Now, why would we want to continue to move in the other direction? In other words, why won't we just start to retract the left and protract the right? Well, that will create rotation as well, but then it's going to start releasing all your energy in the upper shoulder and the upper torso area. So instead of doing that, maybe this makes sense from the X factor perspective, that if we're starting to rotate the lower body and the pelvis and the lower spine, is all starting to rotate in the other direction, that if we continue to try to rotate the upper body in this direction while the lower body is going in this direction, then we're actually creating more of a stretch in our torso here, or in our spine and all the muscles associated. So that's what we're trying to do. So it's left shoulder protraction, right, moving in this way, and right shoulder retraction is always increasing in this area. Next is the scapula dig, which is really a tough one to feel, but you just have to imagine a baseball pitcher when their chest starts to expand as the arm is laid back as far as it can go, and there's external rotation of the right shoulder, that the more the elbow is driven forward and the chest is expanded, the scapula is actually moving in toward the front of the chest. So that might be able to be seen a little bit in this area right here from Martin Keimer's swing. Okay, so if you sort of sense that the the elbow's pulling forward, okay, and the shoulders being held back a little bit, or this right shoulder is held back a little bit, that would be the correct kind of motion. Anybody throwing over the top is going to actually fire this right shoulder straight down this way, and the shoulder starts looking a lot more pointed rather than more relaxed and down, because the scapula digging is actually going to lower the shoulder. Okay, so that's the scapula dig. Next, the left arm is really being pulled in, and again, the muscle to pull in toward the chest is like doing flies when you're at the gym. So you're on the machine and you're pulling both your elbows in towards the center of your chest. It's a pectoral move. Okay, so this left arm is just really smashed up against the chest. Okay, so we don't want to see this separating way too early, because that just tells you that's an arm, kind of an arm swing we're going to be making, right? So again, good for a short game swing, but not good for your power. Here's a little complicated one. The right arm adduction, and it's in the transverse plane. So in other words, this arm, which is this humerus, has to be pulled forward, okay, while we're starting the downswing, and it's happening and it's occurring along with external rotation, which just means it's like the thumb will stay pointed back in this direction here. So the elbow pulls forward, and you're creating a different sort of an elbow movement. Maybe I'll go over this with someone who's not doing this so we can contrast the difference. But basically, the elbow is moving forward, it's not moving straight downward. Okay, it's not going this way, it's moving this way. Okay. Then when your arm gets into this position, right, externally rotated, then it's almost like even the hand, the right hand, is pulling the chest into the pulling the left arm into the chest. Sorry, and then what's also assisting with that is this right bicep behind here is actually firing to keep everything narrowed and in on the right side. The left arm still looks extended, but this right bicep here is firing to get everything narrow. If everything gets wide, we're going to lose the ability to hold the lag. So right bicep contraction also later on needs to relax so that the tricep can fire in the late area of the swing, right? So it's actually, again, all of these motions are really trying to hold back and store energy for us to use later. Okay, so this one here, this should be making a lot of sense, but this one here is more about the club face orientation. So let me go over this one carefully. So the last two are the right forearm pronation and the left forearm supination. If we just look at the club face angle, you know, at the top of the backswing here, and then when he starts down, the club face changes ever so slightly to being a little more closed. And of course, Hogan did this as well. So Hogan went from a more cupped wrist position. He started to change the angle of it as he started down. So this is really important because the people who aren't doing this are going to end up with, you could hold a lot of lag, and if your club face gets way open, there's no point in doing so, because then you'll have such a hard time closing the club face that you'll end up having to flip it at the bottom anyway. So the whole point of this is store energy, but get the club face in a position where we don't have to worry about squaring the club face with these sort of unnecessary compensations. All right, so let's go over some of the more interesting problems that people have with holding lag, and again, some might be from just philosophy. If you feel like you're going to swing your arms first to start the downswing, there's absolutely no way you can hold as much lag and then be as powerful. Again, because the weight of the arms, the weight of the shaft gets so far out, it's the moment of inertia that increases so much, you cannot move fast, so cannot swing fast, right? So let's go over some of those interesting issues. All right, so here's a problem that even good pros can uh, run into problems with, and typically because of the instruction. This is Ernie Els on the left here. Again, learning to set the wrist so early that he's going to create unknowingly a stretch shorten cycle in the forearms and even in the triceps. So if he's using his right forearm extensors to really pull on the club back, and it gets so tight that it starts creating the flexors, a contraction in the flexors, he can't stop that. Okay, so you can try to fight it, but then it's going to want to release early like this. And you can see even the arm is extending, even though it's behind the head. You can see how the hands go kind of up and away. So by doing that, he's going to have to fight this the rest of the way because it wants to early release, and we know that that's what he suffered from. So on the other hand, if you look at Jamie, he doesn't set the wrist as early, and it doesn't reach the max, right? It's not at the max point until somewhere in the end of transition or as he starts to downswing. I mean, this is where the max, uh, say, radial deviation or setting of the wrist occurs. It's not going to happen, someplace in the backswing so that it starts widening already, right? So that would be one of the first things to do is just try not to set the wrist so early and let it feel like it's falling in at the top rather than letting everything sort of get set so early that then the first move has to be, a firing of the tricep to extend the arm and the flexors of the right forearm to actually start casting. Right, so it's a huge difference between these two right here. Okay, so here's another error that's it's called the early right shoulder internal rotation, or again, it's part of a bit of an over-the-top move. So if we'll look at how this forearm moves, the hands move a lot faster than the elbow, and so this distance here is a lot greater than this distance here. So we know that it's a lot faster movement of the hands than the elbow, and that creates a slight over move. Okay, and if it's done correctly, then what we should see, oops, let's do this again. What we should see is the elbow that moves a lot more and a lot faster and a lot more forward. So in that same sort of segment here, so this distance here, right to here, is a lot more than this distance from here to here. And of course, it's the correct angle too, right? The elbow's moving forward, it's not moving down. So if we're moving it down again, we're going to run into some other problems. So let's go take a look at that. So here's a bit of a different move again. So um, Ricky on the right here has, kind of a different move. Again, the elbow is going to move a little bit more vertically down to start. And then to do that, though, it almost requires that the arm is extending. Okay, so you can kind of see how it looks a little bit extended already right here. On the other hand, with Watney here, his elbow's moving a little bit more forward. And then you can see that the angle of this right arm is going to be a lot narrower, right? So this is pretty wide here. Now, the more, again, the elbow goes down, it ends up behind. So here's the hip bone of Ricky, and then his elbow's someplace back here. So it's behind, and then it has to get in front at some point. So the body might have to stall out a little bit and just let the arm go at it. So, towards the end here, it's pretty much just the arms hitting the ball and the body stalled. Watney, on the other hand, has his elbow. So here's his hip, and the elbow looks like it's just a little bit above and maybe just a little in front. So he can rotate through impact before stalling. So it's quite a different move to be able to have that elbow free versus to be stuck behind and have to throw the arms at it. So, and then if we're viewing this from in front, that Ricky has that very early release and looks a little bit like Lee Westwood as well. Here's a little more complicated example of how to hold the leg, but again, using the scapular dig and holding lateral bend, which just means this. If we look at Molinari on the right, he looks about the same as Gainey here. But then you'll start to notice that the shoulders kind of level off, and then the right shoulder just stays up there. Okay, so if he were lateral bending and increasing the lateral bend, then it would naturally have to come lower because the body or the spine is actually um, bent sort of this way versus looking more straight. So there's some differences in the movement of the body, right? So when there's some lateral bend, then the entire hip, torso is going to be able to move together because that's all connected by the spine gears. And what a lot of people do is they relax it or they disconnect the gears, and it causes them to actually push on the body more vertically. So it's not rotational anymore, it gets a little bit more vertical, and the body will stall out a little bit. Okay, the club is going to flip past the hands, and then a lot of body rotation after impact. So this is not quite putting the energy of that swing into the ball, right? Because a lot of the energy or a lot of the rotation happens where? Right here at the end of the swing. Okay? Versus the really good guys get there, they power into it, and then they can just relax out of that. Funky looking follow through at the end, but it's very safe for the back here. This is potentially lower back injury waiting to happen if you keep doing that. So to wrap this up, let me go over all of these moves once again and draw some uh, markings here to let everyone understand what's really going on and why this is so difficult. There's only one movement out of all of these movements that I mentioned, um, actually of the first 10, because we don't want to deal with the club face for now. Let's just deal with the just holding the lag. Is the only one movement to go towards the ball is the right arm. So this right arm adduction or transverse adduction is the only thing that's really pulling towards the ball. Okay, and that should be firing all the way down till the very end and then start to release. Okay, so at the very end there is a release here. Now all the other moves, okay, radial deviations, pulling the club in this direction or opposite of towards the ball. The left arm extension is going this way. Okay, left shoulder protraction is increasing. This protraction means we're putting energy into the swing in this way. Right shoulder retraction that way. The right shoulder digging is actually going in the sort of behind. Uh, it's actually keeping the right shoulder held back in this direction. Okay, so the left arm pulling into the chest, pulling again back that way. Right shoulder external rotation, pull again, the elbow gets pulled forward, but the right shoulder stays, and the thumb maybe this keeps pointing backwards. Okay, then as the right hand pulls the arm in this way, and the right bicep contraction holds the arm from extending toward the ball. So all of these moves, so 9 out of the 10 moves that are really involved in holding lag are all to hold back, store energy, create stretch shorten cycles, whatever you want to call it. But the energy for rotation is where? Where is this coming from? It's coming from the spine, the hips, right? The legs. All of this rotation is occurring all throughout the spine and the lower body. Okay, this area, and everything in the upper body is there to hold back until the very last 20 milliseconds is where all of this release is going to occur. And for the most part, hopefully not having to worry about that so much, because the release should be automatic as a series of stretch shorten cycles if we've created them on the start of the downswing in transition and the beginning of the downswing. So all of these moves should start to trigger the correct sort of release, and this is what we have found is that this kind of movements are just automatic. And of course, who could think of all these things in that short amount of time? It has to be done in a triggered sort of a way. And again, the processing of your brain to send a signal to the muscles just takes, over a tenth of a second easily. So there's no way you can control all these things. What you can do is work on these movements in holding lag more so than worrying about the releasing of the lag. And so um, I've got a lag prototype right now, and in the next couple of months I should have everything ready, and that should help everyone understand how to develop all of these moves without thinking, and at the same time, in fact, um, adding some chains, you could actually get the understanding of where all this energy for rotation is coming from, and develop some speed as well. So good luck, guys. We shall talk to you later.